Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all today and thank those of you who participated to the first session in this series. As you know, last week we ran a first session which focused on the different types of grants available from the ERC and the application process. If you missed that session, recording of the session and the slides which were presented are available on our website. And we will shortly provide answers to all of the questions which we were not able to answer live during the session as well. So today's session is to focus on more practical measures for support for you. So to provide you on where you can seek support, to highlight the support that the national contact points, the NCPs, can give locally in the countries where you're located, and also to raise some awareness about some initiatives which are supported by some of our member states and some of the associated countries to support promising researchers in view of their application, particularly in countries which currently host few ERC grants. So I'm delighted to have a lineup of 4 different speakers today, including, in addition to myself. So first of all, I would like to welcome Aurelija Povilaikė, who's the national contact point for Lithuania. You see her on screen now. Secondly, Rosaria Carbone, who's a communication advisor in my unit for communication in the European Research Council Executive Agency. We have Michal Smetana from Charles University in the Czech Republic, who you also see on screen. And we have Michał Tomza from the University of Warsaw in Poland. And Michał, at the moment I see you're connected as an attendee rather than as a presenter. My colleague Rosaria has sent you a message so that you can change your connection details, because as an attendee, you'll not be able to activate your microphone or your camera. So we need you to disconnect and reconnect as an attendee. If it's not clear, Rosaria sent you a message, you can be contacted again so that we can make sure you're in the right format. And I realized I've made the cardinal sin of not introducing myself. So I'm Martin Penny, and I'm the head of unit for communication in the executive agency for the European Research Council. And it's my pleasure to be your host this morning for this webinar. But before we start the proceedings, it's always good to get to know a little bit more about you. And for this, we'll use Slido. Rosaria will present on the screen the details of how you connect to Slido. So you can do this from your mobile phones or from your computers, whichever you prefer. You can go to slido.com and you can just use the hashtag. You can just use the QR code, I beg your pardon, here to link directly to Slido. So I hope you've all had a chance to do that now. And then we have 2 simple questions just to get to know you more. So perhaps we can show the first question. So for you researchers thinking of applying for an ERC grant, where would you look for information and guidance? Would you go to our website, look to other ERC grantees, to the national contact points, to the grants office in your host institution? It's just to get a feeling of where you would currently think of going. You had 68, so about half of us are answering. I'll give a few more minutes. 77, about 180 online. So it's about almost half of them are answering. Let's wait until we get to 90. It's going to go slowly now, I say that. 84, 86, 87, need another 3. 89. Okay, we'll leave it like that. So most will come to our website, which I think is a really good source of funding. But I think also it's important to make sure that you raise the awareness of your national contact point. And this is one of the things which this question is about. Have you already contacted the NCP in your country? And this is interesting and shows the importance of this session, because we're currently at 78, almost the same numbers who answered the last time. And clearly the vast majority haven't contacted your NCP yet. And so I think this is one of the things which is going to be really important today, to explain the importance of being in contact with your NCP, the support, the advice and the guidance they can give you. So thank you very much for that. It helps us give a flavor for who's here. and what you already know about the ERC and the sources of advice and guidance you're looking for. So today, we'll give an overview of the NCP, the National Contact Point Network. Aurelija will provide insight into the service that she and her colleagues provide in Lithuania, and this is very similar to services provided in other countries by other NCPs. So we're using Lithuania as an example of the services which the NCPs provide. My colleague Rosaria will present the support initiatives of potential applicants that I talked about. And we'll hear from two ERC grantees, Michal and Michał, who have benefited from these support activities before successfully winning their ERC grants. If I can just remind you of some housekeeping rules, because there's almost 200 of us online. If I can ask that whilst your cameras and microphones are off, you can ask questions in Slido, and we'd encourage you to do that. The questions and answers sessions will be opened in Slido very shortly. It's easier to manage in Slido than it is doing the questions and answers via the chat in WebEx. The reason for that is you may see that other people have a very similar question to you, and rather than having to type your question again, you can simply give that a thumbs up. I see Laura has given you the details of how you put the questions already in Slido in the chat. We will check the link for Alif there, but we will check to see it's working, but we'll contact you bilaterally, Alif, to make sure that everything is fine with that. But in Slido, your questions and answers, you can give them the thumbs up. The top rated ones will be the ones we will answer first. And so it's good to review the questions which other people have posed so that you can be sure they will be answered. I see some thumbs going up, that's great. Okay, so with no further ado, I will start and present to give you a very short presentation on what the NCPs are and how they are funded before we go into much more detail in terms of what they actually do. Before Aurelija explains the details that they provide, the details of the services they provide in Lithuania. So I'm just struggling to make my slides move. Give me 1 second. There we go. So simply, many of you said that you haven't already contacted the national contact points. This is why we think you should do so, and I think it'd be important to do so early. They're really your local source of advice and guidance and best practice. They can provide information on the ERC grant opportunities, the rules and the procedures, guidance on how to participate in the calls, making sure that you're aware of some good practice in writing proposals. They can provide support in the preparation process and advise you through the whole submission process. They can also provide advice on the administrative procedures with your host institutions, working very closely with the. I'm just checking. I get a note to say people don't see the slides. Rosaria, can I check you can see my slides?
I can see your slides.
Yes, Marty.
Okay, so we will just need to check perhaps with some of the colleagues online who are unable to see them. I see more messages saying they're coming through. So we'll just check with that one person. You just worried me for a second, but we'll check and find a solution for you when you couldn't find it. But all the slides will be presented and made available afterwards if needs be. But back to the NCPs. They also provide all of the advice on the administrative procedures, the financial aspects and everything like that, in addition to your host institution. They also offer regular workshops or training sessions, sometimes in inviting speakers from the ERC, inviting previous successful grantees. And they're also there to make sure that within your research institutions, the ERC grant schemes are known. Now, the NCPs are actually a standard part of the support for the whole of the Horizon Europe programme. As you may know, the European Research Council is one component of the broader framework programme for research and innovation, which we call Horizon Europe, the framework programme for research and innovation. And they are national structures. They're not linked directly to the EU. They're national support. So they're operated and financed by the governments of the member states and also the countries associated to Horizon Europe. In addition, many other countries that are neither member states or associated countries have also nominated NCPs because they view that it's important for their research community to be given advice and guidance on how they work with European researchers in participating in the framework programme or in the case of the ERC, for example, in participating in the synergy grants, or researchers from those countries taking part in the individual fellowships. They can be quite different because they are all run by different countries. So sometimes they can be, an individual, sometimes it can be a network, they can be very centralized in central government, decentralized across the different research institutions. And they can be hosted by national authorities or regional authorities. Sometimes they're within universities, sometimes within research councils, and so on. And in general, there's a different NCP for each different part of Horizon Europe. In some countries, particularly in some of the very smaller countries, it may be that you have an NCP who covers more than one different type of program. When we look at the ERC NCPs, we currently have 61 different NCPs only within the member states, 28 within the associated countries, and 48 in third countries. So those 2/3 of you who hadn't contacted your NCPs, you've got plenty of people out there to contact and plenty of offers of support and guidance. And this it shows on this slide, one thing which is sometimes really helpful, and great, Louise, now you see the slides, is that they can also provide more personalized support, understanding the national context that you work in, and also can answer questions and answers in your native language as well. To find out who they are, you go to the funding and tenders portal. We will share the slides for that. And then you can click on the section looking for the contact details. Actually, in my slide when you received afterwards, you'll see there's the hyperlink link there, and you can get the full details and the exact link of where you find your NCPs for your country. So what do we do to make sure that the NCPs have all of the information and guidance that they need, so that all the information and details that they need so they can guide you appropriately? We organize regular support meetings and training sessions for NCP meetings. So we organize 3 of those a year, where we provide them information on the latest details, maybe updates, changes, outcomes of previous calls, advice and guidance based on issues that we may have seen in previous calls. We also send them regular updates on operational matters, on call results, and so on. And we address questions from them about a range of different operational matters and different administrative procedures. One of the things which is important is, of course, within the European institutions, we get a lot of questions about our grant schemes. So when you have a question to ask, it's best to channel it through the national contact points, because when we are answering questions coming in from the research community, we give priority to those coming from national contact points, because we know that question will be shared with a broad range of different researchers from that country, and indeed with the whole of the NCP network. So you will get a much quicker response to questions that you have going through the NCPs. First of all, they probably will know the answer directly themselves. And if not, they'll be able to answer it to us, and you'll get a quicker response in that respect. And as I've said, we also run joint information sessions with NCPs, and the collaboration we have today with Aurelija is a good example of that. One of the things which the Scientific Council of the European Research Council agreed to do this year is to share best practices and raise the general standard of support for the whole of the NCP network. And so they included in their work program a particular call targeted just at the national contact point network, so that they can receive funding to make sure that this practice is shared and raise the general standard of support, particularly in countries where there's been less participation in ERC calls to date. It's a little too early to give you information on this project because it's just been submitted and it's currently under evaluation, but we will be able to send you more information once that project is available and the additional support that will mean for all of you. So that's really the end of my presentation. I've noticed there were some questions on the whether being able to answer the question and answer session, post questions in Slido. We'll come back to you on that just to make sure everything is working. But with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. And I would like to now hand over to Aurelija to give her presentation on giving examples of the services provided by a national contact point. So Aurelija, delighted that you're here with us. And we need to just check with my colleagues that Slido is open, because I see there's a few questions in that respect. And we will.
Yes, Martin, it's open now. I can share maybe for a moment the code.
Share again if that's okay. We'll just need to ask Aurelija to stop sharing, and then we'll share again.
Thank you.
Slido, and then you will have that again. So if you haven't already had a chance to do this, is where you post questions. We don't post them in the chat because it's harder to answer them there. So if everyone now has that, just submit them using this link, and we will shortly be able to answer your questions. So Aurelia, sorry for interrupting you. Thank you very much. Delighted that you're here today.
The questions are important, and I think we learn a lot from the questions and the answers as well that we share. First of all, thank you very much to Martin, Rosaria, and the whole team for having me, inviting me over to share our experience and the support. I was nodding while Martin was saying and signing under each of his words that do contact your national contact points. I was slightly surprised about the Slido questions that so many of you haven't contacted your national contact points. And I just want to reiterate, they're there, they're waiting for your questions, and we're your critical friends. So we're not only national contact points, somebody nominated to get the information from ERC, but we're here to help you and guide you through the whole process. So how we do that in Lithuania, and I'm here to give you a few examples. But before that, I think it's very important to highlight Lithuanian ERC grantees. We're a small country. We're really progressing well in Horizon Europe. In Horizon 2020, we had only one grantee, Saulius Klimašauskas, and in the last 4 years, we got 5 grantees. Most of them in life sciences, so this is where our strength is. However, with national contact point support and research managers, we aim to boost that number by the end of program. So as you can see, I mentioned 6 ERC grantees, but on this slide, you see only 5. So yesterday was Independence Restoration Day of Lithuania, 35 years independent. And yesterday it was officially announced our 6th grantee that has been funded through transferred funds, Urte Neniškytė, again from the Life Sciences panel. So we have seen a huge improvement, potential, and the growth in getting ERC grants in the last 4 years of Horizon and a bit of Horizon Europe program. But what do we do? Thank you very much for the applaudissements. And what do we do? As Martin mentioned, we have as NCPs all the same core functions. So those core functions are defined by NCP minimum standards guides, and they are unique throughout every single country, associate, member state, or third country. So we advise, we inform, we provide consultations, we organize events, and we assist applicants. What does it mean? So, for example, if you come to us and you want to apply for the ERC grant, but you're not ready after a consultation, we might suggest you to go to the Marie Curie, to the national funding schemes, or other instruments that might help you to grow to be an ERC applicant in the future. And when we talk about information sharing and what Martin has already indicated, we do take a very proactive approach. We talk with applicants as well in person and online in a smaller information sessions and the bigger information sessions. We always, when we organize information sessions at the national level for different types of the funding, we try to invite the successful grantees, not only from the national level, that means our grantees in Lithuania, but we try to invite the colleagues from other countries because it's good to hear about their success stories. And again, here goes thanks to all the ERC grantees who are very much willing to always share their good practice and experience. It has been mentioned already that we're grateful to our colleagues recently in, I think in March and as well in August, we had ERC scientific officers helping out with our information sessions in person and as well online. And even this year, from end of January, so this is like on the highlights our proactive approach. Since end of January to mid of March, at the national level, we will have produced 12 presentations at the information sessions. What we do proactively, we go to different universities, units, faculties, and talk about the ERC. sometimes longer, sometimes in the smaller groups, sometimes to the whole university, but we want to spread the word. So, you know, what is ERC, what it's about, and that you shouldn't be afraid of this funding scheme, because we're all very much sure that you have this capacity, but maybe there's lack of courage to take those first steps. So one of the first myths we try to break down through these very proactive information sessions at the national level is to break down the myth about ERC being somewhere in the ivory tower, high up and impossible to achieve for the widening countries, because we know that it is possible. One of the great examples you can see here, Lithuanian writing, but it was a very successful thematic Marie Curie, ERC, and the JSC session, as well as EIC for early career researchers. We had 60 early career researchers joining us in the panel discussion and the presentations where the opportunities for their career path has been presented. So we not only do information sessions that are for the wider audience, for all the career stages, but we try to focus and find a way to reach those early career researchers too. We not only do at the national level events, otherwise it would get boring. We have colleagues, we are a network as well of ERC and CPs. And since 2021, we have been collaborating with our Latvian and Estonian colleagues, national contact points, and we organize at least one collaborative event every year. Some of the events are focused on few funding calls, others just sharing the best practice from grantees and ex-panel members. And I have put up the slide, the registration is still open. Do join us for the Synergy Grant Information session for the Baltic states, and not only for all the widening states. So please join this session. It will be very interesting because we have success stories. We have as well our colleagues joining from the agency and other insights. What else we do? We organize training sessions. So it's not only information sessions where we go and present the work programs, share the best practices and the tips how to write, but at the same time we organize training sessions, all day, 2-day training sessions, how to write the grant proposal. We do reading sessions as well, meaning that we collect through those sessions grant proposals of B1 and B2, and we provide the feedback. And this is a photo of the training session that's taken place a couple of weeks ago, and where over 40 future ERC applicants have gathered to learn tricks and tips, what actually means, what successful ERC application should be looking like. Besides information sessions and training sessions, Baltic region-wide sessions, we do a lot of one-to-one support. And this is where I really encourage you not to be afraid and call your NCP, drop them an email, or even meet them for coffee. Because what happens is then we know what your science is about, we know what you're looking for, we can advise you if it's too early for you to apply for the ERC grant, because there are restrictions for reapplication. So you need to really evaluate yourself at what career stage you are and if you're ready to do so. And NCP, together with the research managers at your university, can really help you to make that choice. So what we do at the national level, as I mentioned, we do proofreading of B1 and B2, but we do not comment on science. We will read through to make sure as we as the lay readers can understand your science. Does it makes us exciting? Because if we're excited, it's very likely that even your evaluators will get excited too. We provide the support for FNT portal when you're submitting an application. We do get panicked calls saying we can't submit, something happened. So do follow advice and submit early enough before the deadline. We answer a lot of eligibility questions, and here I would like to really give my thanks to the executive agency colleagues who help us to answer some of those eligibility questions, and then we share with everybody else. Budgetary questions too, if you're not sure how to budget, what to include. Implementation of the project. Once you start implementing, again, we get lots of questions. And most importantly, what we help and what we do is have a coffee with you. And the coffee is an extremely powerful tool, not only when you receive the grant and preparing the grant preparation, but when you don't get it in the first time round. Then we meet up for the coffee. We look through your evaluation summary reports. We make a plan. Is that plan to wait another 2 years or a year, depending where you are? Do you need to work on your methodology? And just talk through, because when you submit already to the ERC, you are at a high level. You might just miss few extra steps that you need to implement. So I would say the coffee is the best currency. So don't be discouraged, and invite your NCPs for the coffee to discuss your project and ask all the questions about the spending scheme. And we are very fortunate in Lithuania. There's 3 of us supporting applicants at the national level. So there's my colleagues, Martina, Gabriele, and myself. So that's why we are in the fortunate position that we can proactively go find those applicants and sometimes just hold their hand until there's more courage to apply for the ERC. So if you have any questions, please do let us know. But one, again, word of encouragement. Let's hope next time round we do this Slido questionnaire. There's actually 70% of people contacting NCPs rather than 30. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aurelia. And indeed, I hope that will be the case, that we'll reverse those percentages. So we now have some time for questions and answers. We've already received some. If you're having trouble getting into Slido, the contact links are there. You can join either from the QR code or by using this hashtag that you see on screen. We have some questions. It's also your opportunity, even if it's questions that you would ask to an NCP, rather than asking about the NCP services, you can also do so as well. So if you have questions on the application process, both myself and Aurelia would be happy to answer that. But I think the first question, Aurelia, maybe we can answer this together in terms of what do we mean by national? You know, if I'm living in country A, if I'm from country A, living in country B and applying for a grant in country C, which one should I reach out to? So maybe you answer first, and I'm sure we'll have the same answer.
Hopefully we're going to have the same answer. The host institution for the ERC grant has to be in that country. You can live in the country B, but apply in the country A. So for example, if you live in Germany and you would like to apply with the institution in Lithuania, you can contact us. So the national contact points you need to contact in those countries where you plan to implement your research. Martin, do you agree?
I agree fully, because I think that's, in practice, you can contact any of them. And yes, you have the choice, you have multiple choices of support. But it's much more logical if you're applying for a grant in country C that you contact, first of all, the NCPs for country C, because they are the way you'll be implementing the grant. They know the national rules, they know the national procedures. And then, you know, let's keep our fingers crossed you get the grant. They can also be there to support you after the grant in some of the implementation aspects of it. So I think it's good to make those relationships with them first of all.
Yeah, absolutely. And they will still provide you the same service as anywhere else. And I think you might even get some extra support because you're so willing to come to their country and do the research.
Perfect. So second question, and this is really specifically for you to give an idea. I mean, you presented on screen training sessions. Maybe you can give an example for Lithuania in terms of the cost and how long it takes. I know the procedures will be different in each country, but let's have an example from what you do in Lithuania.
So for the training sessions, the big session that we had a couple of weeks ago, we all tried to organize them once a year. How much do they cost? They're expensive, but it is an investment as we see it. However, we do organize at least 2-3 times a year a smaller training sessions on a very specific call. So it might be a starting grant. Like in July, we had 18 future ERC starting grant applicants meeting with us for 4 hours. And we ran through the questions the evaluators will be looking at and how to structure B1 and B2. So those training sessions very much depends on the call and on the demand as well from our applicants.
Thank you. And just when you say they're expensive, you're talking about the cost of putting them on?
Not the cost, it depends. So some sessions we run ourselves, others we invite the lecturers from outside. We have a budget for the training to buy experts, just to say.
That's right, but for people to attend?
No, it's free. It doesn't cost anything.
That's what I understood, but I just wanted to check.
Okay. No. All our training sessions are for free for all the applicants in Lithuania. I haven't even realized that could be even a question.
Yeah. And that is the case for national contact points across
Yes,
all of the member states.
absolutely.
That's what I think is really important to realize. If you haven't contacted them, not only are they great, they know the rules, that they can there and help you, but they will give you free advice. And I think that's one of the things which is really important.
Exactly. And on the top of that, I just will highlight that even the proofreading that we do, it's for free. We want to help to improve your application. So for all our services, for the NCP services, it's free across all the member states and associated countries and the third countries too.
Then a really practical question, and it's the case for Lithuania as well. I see that there are several NCPs for the country I want to apply for. Should I contact all of them at once? How would you do that in Lithuania? Because it's probably going to be the same for our colleagues in other countries too.
We're very collegial between three of us. So if you contact one of them, we will share that, oh, we got a contact from this person, they want to apply. And then all three of us will help with reviewing the application and any additional questions. There is one lead person, and then others will chip in when necessary. You don't really need to contact all of them. I think just contact one person. They have shared a workload inside the organization, so you shouldn't worry who to contact. All of them will help you with your questions.
Thank you, and I'm sure that's the case for all countries. So proceed in the same way for the country that you're wanting to contact for your NCPs. The next question I'm a little surprised by. So I saw that support for applicants in humanities and related social sciences are poor, maybe because most applications are in science and engineering fields and NCPs are not experienced in humanities. Is there a way to compensate for this? From the side of the ERC, we have roughly now a third in terms of life sciences, physical sciences and engineering, and social sciences and humanities applications. So it's not that the numbers are low in that respect. And most of the NCPs are discipline agnostic in a way.
Exactly.
They want to ensure that support is given to applicants irrespective of the area. The NCPs are not going to give you peer review advice on your research.
No.
They're going to make sure that you have every piece of information, support and guidance to make sure that you can present your research in the most effective way possible so that it'll be attractive to the peer reviewers who are writing it. So I think if you haven't contacted your NCP, or if you've been disappointed perhaps from the support that you've received, let us know if there is an issue there, or maybe you can contact an NCP in a different country if you're and try and get some support from them if that would be the case. But Aurelia, would you have any other?
Yes, I just would like to add there is this yet another myth that social science and humanities applicants are less successful applying for the ERC grants.
Yeah.
But they are not. I think there's maybe less applicants, especially we can see from our statistics in Lithuania, they are less confident about their research putting forward, or they're still growing to be ERC applicants. But as Martin said, and I mentioned as well, we do not comment on science. The application form is the same. The requirements are the same. The scientific evaluation and the form is structured in the same way. So we do not discriminate against the different disciplines. It's just maybe we don't see enough of humanities and social related science disciplines applying for the ERC grant.
Aurelia, I suggest we take just the next two questions because we're a little over time, but the questions which haven't been answered, we'll come to later, or we will answer in writing afterwards. So the first one is the information on the session. I see that my colleague Laura has put it in the chat, so you have the link there. And then there's a question relating Indonesia or developing countries. There's a similar question lower in the chat about Pakistan as well. And just so to be clear, researchers of any nationality can apply for ERC grants. The requirement is that you apply with a host institution, which can be a university, a company, a research organization, research institution in one of the member states or an associated country. And the time that you need to spend whilst you're doing your grant within the EU or the associated countries, at least 50% of your time needs to be spent in that member state or associated country. So yes, it's open to researchers from anywhere in the world in any discipline. So, Aurelia, anything else that you would like to add?
No, I think I will said already, and I mentioned that again. NCPs are your critical friends. Don't be afraid to get in touch with them. And we work closely with the research managers at the institutions too. So we do know the issues you're facing, but more help you seek, there's more chances your application will improve and the success rate increased.
Thank you. So I'll ask Rosaria if we can stop sharing the questions. I know some of you have not had the opportunity to be able to have your question answered live. We will try and do so at the end of the webinar. If not, we will answer the questions in writing afterwards. And for those of you who maybe still have questions that were not answered in the first webinar last week, rest assured you will receive an answer in those in writing. So then I'd like to move to the next presentation where we start looking at these national measures to support potential grantees. And here I would like to give the floor to my colleague Rosaria Carbone, who's a communication advisor working with me and my team in the ERC, and she'll present two particular schemes, the Visiting Fellowships Program and the Mentoring Initiative. So Rosaria, if you're able to share your screen, great, and then the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Martin. So I'm going to briefly present these two initiatives that the ERC has launched in cooperation with the national authorities, with the member states and associated countries. So what is the aim? The aim is to capitalize on the full European potential for frontier research, to contribute to an inclusive culture of scientific competitiveness in Europe, and to increase application, of course, in ERC calls from those countries hosting few ERC grantees, from those countries where the success rate is low, and to facilitate also dialogue with the relevant national stakeholders in order to provide the scientists with a better support. In which way the ERC is doing this? So the ERC has launched these two initiatives, one in 2016, the Visiting Fellowships Program, and the other one, more recent, in 2021, the Mentoring Initiative. So the first one, the ERC acknowledges the fact that in some European countries, the low international exposure among researchers can have an impact, can affect their ability to fully develop their research potential. That's why the ERC has encouraged national authorities to set up some mobility programs that could benefit promising scientists. They can strengthen with these mobility programs their research profile, gain experience abroad, and also receive useful guidance in view of applying to an ERC grant. How? Joining ERC funded teams abroad. Who are the beneficiaries of this measure? Researchers from the participated countries' agencies, and I will show in a couple of slides which are these countries and agencies. So the researchers can join for a short period of time, from a minimum of 1 month to a maximum of 6 months, an ERC grantee, an ERC team, before they apply for their first ERC grant. What is important to know is that the ERC facilitates this program, promotes these programs, and this is what we are doing now, but the programs are managed by the national authorities, so the conditions vary according to the different countries. How they work? So the ERC launches an annual call to its grantees, asking them if they are available to host visiting researchers, to strengthen their teams, to diversify their teams, for knowledge sharing, and to contribute to the development of science in Europe. Once the list is ready, the list is shared with the national authorities. What the national authorities, the national funding agencies do, they set their own criteria and selection process. They launch annual calls. Sometimes, in some cases, there are open calls, and they cover the salary and travel costs of the selected researchers. So the interested researchers in the different countries, in order to apply to these programs, they have to contact the national authorities. They have, of course, to read the guidelines, because again, the requirements, the conditions can be different from one country to another. They have to apply to go through this selection process. I would like to underline that the ERC does not intervene in this selection process. So if they are selected, they join an ERC-funded team, usually abroad. As I said, the salary and the travel costs of the researcher are covered, and then they commit to apply for ERC funding in a specific time frame that can vary to 2-3 years. What are the ongoing programs? We have now 9 countries who have joined the program. You can see the list here. Most of these countries are countries where we have a few grantees. So again, the aim is to increase the number of applications, increase the number of grants in these countries. I've put in orange the next deadlines for those who are interested to contact these organizations and to apply. For those where there is nothing, it means that either we don't have the information for 2025, either that the deadline is already closed. Other countries, of course, and other research organizations can join in the future. The ERC is open to new, basically, opportunities in other countries. So what is the outcome so far? First of all, in the last call that the ERC has launched to its grantees in summer 2024, we had almost 1,000 ERC grantees who are willing to host visiting researchers in their teams. So far, 58 visiting fellows have applied to the ERC. They have submitted 61 proposals, and of these 61 proposals, 8 have been funded, which is a success rate, which means a success rate of 13%, which is a success rate much higher of the success rate in some widening countries. So this is really a good result. Of these 8 funded scientists, 6 are based in widening countries, 4 in Poland, and 2 in Slovenia. And we will hear one of them in a few moments. On the right side of my screen, you can see the distribution of the application and of the grants. And we see that basically 6 out of the 8 grants that were awarded are starting grants. So probably this program is more adapted to early career researchers. Then we have another program which is called the ERC Mentoring Initiative. So in most countries, the national authorities have set up some let's say, information sessions, days to support potential applicants, but especially in small countries, they struggle to identify international experts that could help them. When I say experts, I mean people that have experience with the ERC application process, so ERC grantees and ERC panel members. So that's why the ERC decided to provide this expertise. How? Providing a list of ERC grantees and panel members to the national authorities. So again, who are the beneficiary of this initiative? ERC applicants from the participating countries, and I will show in the next slide the participating countries. So before they submit the proposal in order to strengthen the quality of their application, or when they have already been invited to an interview, they can benefit from the experts' feedback. Again, these programs are managed by the relevant organization in the different countries. And so if you are interested, you have to contact the national and regional support offices. How it works? So the ERC approves the mentoring initiatives, which are facilitated by the national contact points. So again, here we can stress the role of the national contact points. The ERC launched a call to its grantees and former panel members and asked them if they are interested, if they are willing to be mentors and coaches for potential applicants, and shares the list with the NCPs. This procedure is fully in line with the rules of conflict of interest and confidentiality of the ERC, because panel members currently serving on an evaluation committee are excluded from this exercise. Only former panel members can participate. So the NCPs, what do the NCPs do? They liaise with the ERC, with the interested local national support offices, and with the experts. So the national and regional offices, they select the applicants, they contact the experts, they put in contact the experts and the applicant. The interested ERC applicants, they have to contact the local office. And of course, if they are selected, they benefit from the experts mentoring. So there are different variety of mentoring, but so far the preferred modality is the one-to-one coaching session, remote individual session between an ERC grantee or a former panel member and the applicant. There are also some countries who organize remote mock interviews for those researchers who have been invited to an interview. I have also to say that the ERC does not give any financial compensations to the mentors. So they do all this on a voluntary basis for free. Some countries are organizing on-site mock interviews or information sessions, and only in this case the countries decide to, of course, cover the travel costs of the mentors. The participating offices now, we have 12 countries who joined the initiative. In 2024, last year, we had 4 new countries. The initiative is open to EU member states, but also to the associated countries. And we see here that we have Georgia, Turkey, and Ukraine. There is a great interest, so maybe in the future this list will be much longer and more possibilities can be given to researchers also in other countries. So what is the outcome so far? 94 mentors, 65 grantees, and 29 former panel members have supported 119 ERC applicants. Of these applicants, more than 50 applied to the ERC calls and 6 were funded, which is a success rate around 12%. And another thing that I would like to say is that in 2024, more than 1,000 ERC grantees and former panel members expressed interest to participate as mentors. And this is a very positive thing, that we have all this a big pool of ERC grantees that are really willing to help other researchers to get access to the ERC funding. I would like also to mention that concerning, for example, the visiting fellowship, that with the pandemic in 2020 and 2021, there were no calls that were issued. Some countries launched again the calls in 2022, but basically we can say that the program fully resumed in 2023. And the time lapse between the moment a researcher applied for a visiting fellowship and the time he or she applies to the ERC grant and gets the results, here we have a time lapse more or less of 3 years. That's why probably in 1 year we can share these figures, will go much more up, and we will share more success stories. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, we are here.
Thank you very much, Rosaria, for that very comprehensive overview of the fellowship and the mentoring scheme. And if people have questions, you can ask. The question and answer session is already open. We've archived the questions from the first session, but we'll re-show those later. It's just that we can give priority to the questions from these presentations. But actually, what we thought, to explain the mentoring initiative and the visiting fellowship program in more detail, it's best to hear from people who've participated in it. And so that's what we'll do in this next section of the webinar this morning. So I'd really like to thank 2 ERC grantees, one who's benefited from the mentoring initiative and one from the visiting fellowship, who are with us today. So I'd like to introduce Michal Smetana, who's an associate professor at the Charles University in the Czech Republic. He's the director of the Peace Research Center in Prague, and he was awarded a starting grant in 2024 for the project Microfoundations of Collective Defense. And he benefited from the mentoring initiative, which was facilitated by the Czech Republic. I'd also like to welcome Professor Michal Tomza from the University of Warsaw, who's the leader of the Quantum Molecular Systems Research Group, and he was awarded a starting grant in 2021 for the project on ultra-cold polyatomic molecules for controlled chemistry and precision physics. And he benefited from the visiting fellowship, where he visited the Institute for Quantum Optics and Quantum Information at the University of Innsbruck in Austria. So maybe with Michal and Michal, maybe I can start off and maybe come to Michal first of all. And I have the same question for both of you, so that people can understand exactly who you are and where you're coming from. Could you explain briefly what your research interests are? And if I can challenge you in a single sentence, explain what your ERC project is about. So maybe if I come to Michal from the Czech Republic first.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and discuss this with all of you. I will try to be very brief. My general interests are related to international security, international affairs. I study how wars start, how they continue, how conflicts arise, and I'm usually using experimental methods to understand the micro foundations of these dynamics, which brings me to my actual topic of the ERC, where I study the role of public opinion in collective defense commitments. Thank you.
Very clear, very succinct. Thank you. If I can come to Michal and ask the same question, your research interests, and again, challenge you in a single sentence, what your research project is about.
Yes, so my group works on ultra-cold matter. It is atoms, molecules, ions at very, very low temperatures, very, very close to the absolute zero. And we learn how to control and use it for different applications. And my ERC was particularly focused on understanding the complexity of ultra-cold polyatomic molecules, so molecules more complex than before were used, and harnessing its internal complexity for different applications in chemistry and physics.
Thank you. Very clear again. And maybe, Michal, if I can stay with you, can you tell me what made you decide to apply for an ERC grant?
Of course, there were a few reasons. So, I mean, I had probably many research ideas that I wanted to realize, and to realize this is his idea, you need a research group. So I think this was part of the motivation, somehow the natural next step, that I just wanted to develop, to do more research, to work harder maybe. And maybe this is not the best advertisement that you can work harder with your ERC. But I think it was very also important, a very natural step. So somehow in the academic career. But I think that for me, being in Poland, it was also very important the possible visibility that you can gain with ERC. Because I think as a person from this part of the Europe, we are struggling a bit with, for example, attracting best applicants from the Western Europe or US, right? So we are quite often, as a Polish, Czech, or other Central European or this widening countries, we are somehow, if not second, sometimes third choice for the best applicants globally for PhD or postdoc positions. And I think this visibility that you can gain from ERC is something that was very important. So this was also a big motivation for me to realize my ideas. I need good people to join my group. And this was very, I think, important aspect of applying for ERC.
Thank you. So very much this quality label that you were talking about.
Yes.
The attractiveness. Thank you. Can I ask the same question to Michal? What made you apply for an ERC grant?
Thanks. Well, I got a Primus grant, which is kind of like a small Czech ERC 4 years ago, and that allowed me to establish a small lab working with a few colleagues. And again, this felt like an amazing natural step that would allow me to study what I want for a relatively long period, to get enough funds to do something which is usually quite costly, in my case, to conduct survey experiments in many different countries. And altogether, yeah, I mean, I love the flexibility that ERC gives you in order to study exactly what you want on your own timeline and to compose, put together a team that you like working with.
Thank you, very clear. And so again, one of the key features that Michal talked about is the flexibility of ERC grants. And that's something, if people have questions, we'll be happy to talk about it. But now maybe I can come to some more in-depth questions. Rosaria gave an overview of the opportunities that are available. I'm interested to hear about your experience. And maybe if I start with the mentoring initiative with Michal, could I ask, when did you first hear about this mentoring initiative?
I guess in a very early stage, when I started playing with the idea of proposing an ERC, I basically checked with our rectorate, with our university, about the possibility, and they informed me very quickly that, you know, if I would be applying for ERC, that this is an option, that I should submit an abstract for consideration, and if they kind of like it, if they find it ambitious enough and, you know, suitable enough for ERC, that I could join this mentoring initiative.
Okay. And where did you look for assistance? You talked a little bit about the office, but is there anywhere else you would look for assistance?
Besides the university and the mentoring initiative itself, I approached a couple of people who were ERC grantees for some consultations, so that was extremely helpful. But I also to reach out to a number of other colleagues who I value in my field, despite you know sometimes they actually failed with their ERC applications, but they still learned a lot from the process. So that was extremely useful for me to get some feedback, both on the written aspect of the ERC, but also for the interview, where I had a chance to train it a lot and discuss it with other colleagues.
Okay, thank you. Now I have a final question. As part of the mentoring initiative, you're put in contact with an ERC grantee in Norway. What kind of support did you receive?
That was actually quite amazing. This is something that our university arranged and contacted this grantee. I didn't know for a while, you know, what's going to come out of this, but I was very pleasantly surprised that I got a very detailed written feedback that actually forced me to restructure my ERC proposal very substantively. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't even supposed to be in contact with the person, but I contacted him anyway to thank him and clarify a few things. But yeah, it was extremely helpful, and it was maybe the most in-depth feedback I got on my ERC application so far.
So very much a valuable experience then taking part in the mentoring initiative.
Certainly, very much recommend it.
Thank you. Then Michal, if I can come to you and ask about the visiting fellowship. Similar kind of questions. When did you first hear about the visiting fellowship opportunities?
Yeah, so in my case, I think it was like a few years, maybe 1 year, 2 years before, when the first rounds of these fellowships were organized. So there were a few years in Poland that we realized, and somehow I think I realized that it's kind of good opportunity. Yes.
Oh, and sorry, I think I may have cut you off there, but you know, maybe my next question was, who did you contact first? You heard about it. Who did you contact first to take them?
Yes. So in my case, like of course, like for this initiative, I first realized that what is the best place in my field in Europe to go. So the Innsbruck is one of the strongest place in the ultra cold research. So this was my first choice. I had applied few months before with one of the researchers from there for some joint European project, but this particular researcher didn't have ERC, so I just approached the other one that had already at that time 2 ERCs before. So this was very natural. So somehow I selected based on somehow how close the place and the research group there are to my research. And there were also more than one person with ERC in this field at this particular university. So this was also important for me that, okay, I selected like one of the applicants, I approached her, but there were a few other people in the field, few other with ERCs as well. And I found this is kind of the best option for me to learn from.
Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit more about your experience when you were in Innsbruck? You know, how long you were there? What was the most valuable thing that you learned? And what was the most helpful part of your stay there in terms of when you were making your application for your ERC grant?
Yes, so I stayed for 3 months, so it was quite long. And I think that there are kind of these few levels that how can you use it. Of course, this is this kind of most direct level, like you can learn from someone who was successful in getting ERC. In my case, the Professor Ferlaino, she already at that time had 2 ERCs. Later, she got advanced as well, so she collected all 3 possible ERCs. She also was in the panels of ERC at different levels, so she was super experienced in ERC. So it was kind of, you cannot imagine more experienced person in my field with dealing with ERC. So kind of discussing all the details of the procedure or the project was natural. But I think the even more important was to kind of the possibility to confront my proposal with both the ERC winner, but also with her group, with other research groups there. So I think this was really more about like even the kind of environment there. than one particular person. But of course, it was also very important that this person was super experienced in this. So I think that possibility discussing, confronting, maybe brainstorming together for some weak points was super useful. And I think also this was also important for me because at that time I already had a research group running in Poland. So having some time to focus, right, maybe without my teaching bureaucratic duties in Warsaw, it was also quite nice to have this 3 months a bit kind of disconnected with other duties in Warsaw to really spend some time on thinking on the project mostly. So I think this was also an important part of this experience.
It really sounds like it was an excellent experience. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Really excellent experience, and very, very instrumental in terms of your developing your ERC grant. I have one final question to both of you, because I think it's one of the things which there's going to be a lot of people online who are in similar situations to you, who are looking perhaps to make their first ERC application and are looking for the different support, guidance structures, and opportunities to help them which are out there. And I think the visiting fellowship and the mentorship scheme are really key components of that. So maybe if I start, because I see you on screen, Michal, maybe other people see you, but I see you directly in front of me. I start with you. Could you, and it's the same question for both of you, do you have any personal tips that you'd share to encourage researchers in your country to apply for these initiatives and to ERC calls, indeed in other countries where these fellowship and mentoring schemes exist? So personal tips that you would give to other researchers in a similar position to you are in.
And which Michal should start, sorry?
Start with Michał, sorry, in Poland.
Okay, yes, so because it's there is tiny difference in pronunciation.
And
yes.
my pronunciation is probably not good, and apologies. So.
Yes. No, so I think that this is very important somehow, that part of the success in applying for ERC is kind of experience and knowledge, right? So experience on the procedure and the approach to the grant writing proposal. So of course the research idea is the most important, but somehow this kind of know-how, how to do it well, is very important. This is somehow the advantage of many Western top universities, that there are many great colleagues at the department, and we in Poland or Czechia or other countries here, we don't have this. So I think then looking really actively for somehow the community of people experiences, this can be super useful. And I think in this way, the national contact points, or even other, because in Poland we have few other similar kind of national offices helping in ERC, is super useful, because I mean they are very experienced, as was already told, but I think it may be even more important that they can contact with other ERC winners. And I think for people from this part of European Union, this may be the most important, to start networking with more experienced researchers, because I'm always, whenever approach me at my university, I'm known as a person who go around and force people apply for ERC, I will help you. But I think that if you don't have these people around, this is the way how to get. So I think this kind of, all these initiatives are super good for somehow getting this know-how that is not really written on the web pages or in other places. And I think, of course, applying for ERC is very useful for the things that we already discussed. I think that the important parts of this is kind of that, of course, the project has to be ambitious and focused. This is one thing, but also like the know-how that is needed. For example, it's very good to be already much independent, right? So this there can be some assets. This will depend on the call on the field, but in some fields, like having this independence can be very useful. And also the networking and visibility. Of course, there are no clear criterion on this, but I think more network you are, more visible you are in the field, then you are more successful. And it's not only about being successful because they know you as reviewers, but it's also about collecting the ideas, confronting the ideas with the top people, right? So I think these are very important ingredients of doing great research, but also getting ERC. And I think all these initiatives like can really help kind of getting into this right environment that can be supportive for generating the ideas and then selling the ideas in the right way in the proposals.
Thank you. Really clear, and you can tell from the enthusiasm how important this was to you as well. So thank you for those tips. And maybe if I can come to Michal with the same question, personal tips you'd share to encourage researchers to apply to these initiatives and also to the ERC calls.
Yeah, I'll be fairly brief because a lot of it has been already said, and I agree with most of it. So, I mean, for sure, seek as much feedback as possible, especially critical feedback from people that are really going to go into nitty-gritty of your proposal and try to challenge you. Second recommendation is be prepared to revise your proposal many, many times. I mean, I don't remember how many times I did revise it, but the final version was very, very different from the original one. And all this feedback that I talked about like helped me to really structure my argument. And maybe this third one, which is kind of maybe underappreciated. I mean, like very often, like all of these ERC applicants are hearing about trying to frame their proposal in a way that is like very high achieving, you know, this high risk, high reward thing that has been so famous in the context of ERC. I would still recommend you not to underestimate the aspect of this being feasible. I mean, it's not something that you just want to show that you have high ambitions, but I mean, a lot of questions that will be there are related to feasibility of your project, to your ability to conduct it within the time frame. And I feel that sometimes this is really underappreciated, and you should really show that you know what you are doing and you are able to achieve it successfully within the 5 years of the project.
Thanks very much, Michal. I think that's really sound advice. And I see we have quite a lot of questions coming in already. So I think that perhaps if you can both keep your cameras on, because I think the questions are going to be directed to all of us who've spoken this morning. And Rosaria, if you're able to share the screen with the questions. I already announced the first one. The first one, Michal, is actually a very personal question to you. I hope you're okay to answer it. How many times did you apply? I guess it's for the ERC grant. And did you get the grant at your first attempt? So whoever would like to speak first from the two of you.
Well,
So I can.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, I applied only once, so I got it in the first attempt. In my case, but this is also part of the strategy. So I was somehow ready to apply 1 year. I applied also in the last possible year, or in the 7-year window. So I was probably ready to apply in the already 6th year, like 1 year before the deadline. But then I decided that strategically, it's better to wait 1 more year, because I had already several good papers on the way, right? So I knew that some nature physics paper are coming after the deadline for the 2020 ERC call. So somehow strategically I decided, okay, maybe it's risky, but it's better. My CV will be visibly stronger 1 year later. So I decided to wait until the last call. Maybe it's, in my case, it worked. I don't know how it will be in other cases, but this was my case.
Thank you. Michal, the same question to you?
Yes, it was also my first attempt.
So great, and shows the support from the system. And just a comment to what Michal was saying, of course, the timing of when you decide within to apply within the eligibility window is your choice. We see a lot of people who do exactly what you said, who wait until towards the end of the eligibility window. But actually, we see very little difference in success rate across the whole of the eligibility window. So there's very little difference in success rate from those in starting grant who are 2 years after PhD and those who are 7 years. So I think it's just the time you have to decide what time is right, when you have the right story to tell the writer about yourself and the right research question to ask. So the next question is for both of you again, and maybe if I come to Michal from the Czech Republic first of all. What was your time frame for preparing the applications? When did you start formulating research question, writing? And how did the mentoring initiative or visiting fellowship come into the picture in that time frame?
I was actually checking this for another presentation that I'm doing, and altogether the whole process, like starting with even like formulating the original idea, discussing it with the team, and like putting together like the first like draft idea, that started like a year before I actually applied. But the intense phase only started, okay, so if I applied in October, I would say that the intense phase of preparations with the mentoring initiative started in spring. So that would be like from spring to summer, that was the most intense phase, with the summer actually being dedicated to writing up B1 and B2. Then in September, there were still like some feedback sessions, and then in October I applied.
Very clear. Michal, you've already given some information on the timing, but can you take us through your time frame for preparing it and how the visiting fellowship came into the picture in that time frame?
Yeah, so I started thinking about my application probably 1.5 years before actual application, and this aligned exactly with applying for this initiative. So I think that probably the first time I put the first version of my proposal, because in Poland to get this visiting fellowship, I needed to put 1-page description of my ERC proposal. So this was, I think, 1.5 before my actual application, because I also considered applying like in the 1 year before. And then I think I spent like 1 year thinking on this and kind of mostly on the idea. Of course, the writing process was in the last month, so it was not so long, but I think I had kind of approached several people. I prepared the abstract of kind of several versions of abstracts, and within 1 year before the deadline, I was kind of at some occasions discussing it with different people. So it was kind of long, not very intense, but very long period where I had my ERC idea with me at different occasions.
Thank you very much. A lot of questions to you. The next question is also, at what stage of your career did you apply? Was your CV already advanced? Did you get any other funding before the starting grant? But maybe this is also a general question which is asked to NCP. So maybe Aurelia, do you want to answer that one first, and I come to our 2 existing grantees? What advice would you give to people coming to you who ask this question? What stage of their career should they apply? Did they need funding in advance? How advanced was their CV?
Yes, it's a difficult question. First of all, we'll look at the CV and the achievements, what has already been mentioned, to make sure that, especially for the starting grants and consolidators, to take into account the eligibility window. Because if you're not successful and you get a C, means you miss 2 years. When you are at the beginning of just that eligibility window, and we have an applicant who has a good profile, brilliant idea, we do encourage them to apply, because they have a chance to reapply it in the worst case scenario after 2 years. But what they do get, they get a valuable feedback from the reviewers, meaning that then they can improve the application if needed. But that's a very individual conversation, and we do talk individually, see where they are, what their plans are, make sure they don't miss out this crucial eligibility window.
Thank you.
Not to rush. One of our advice is do not rush.
Very wise advice. And maybe we can take it personally, come to Michal from Poland, first of all.
Yes, yes, in my case, I think my CV and my independence were very strong part of my application. This was also related with waiting until 7 years. So I think I really kind of based it and probably got it partially on my good CV related to the peers in starting stage. But I think also in my case, I also got lots of funding before. So most of my research that I presented for ERC application, they were already obtained in my research group with my PhD students, my postdocs. And I think this is more general, that in natural sciences, most of Polish applicants getting ERC, they already had before national funds, they already established research group, and they somehow apply from this position of already being independent researcher.
Thank you.
Or starting as well, because for consolidator, it's clear that you have to be independent.
Okay.
But can I just add that even for the social science and the humanities, you still have to show the independence and the leadership as well. So it's not for the natural sciences, so for every single domain, meaning that the profile has to be at the right level.
Thank you. And Michal, if you also answer this question, I think people are interested in your personal experience.
Yeah, it's fairly similar experience. I mean, I did apply in the last eligible year that I could. My CV already was quite developed at that point, and I had a couple of grants before, even like some large grants. So, I mean, when I was reading the reviews, this was quite appreciated in most reviews, that they already like kind of trusted me that I'm able to carry on the research based on my previous achievements.
Thank you. Then there are questions again.
Martin, can I just quickly add as well what the colleagues already have mentioned, that the seeking help, that even if you don't go on the fellowship, you don't have a mentor, still ask as many people, researchers, your close research group, other critical friends to read your application and get that feedback to improve it. So just to reiterate the importance of sharing and getting the feedback and applying it then to your application.
No, indeed, very, very wise advice. Then a question, really, we're looking at the interview stage. So it's again a question for Michal and Michał. What questions surprised you at the time of the interview? If we ever get to this stage, what should we expect? So whilst you're thinking of the questions, let me just explain the way in which the interview phase works. This is in the step 2 of the evaluation. And the format and style of the interview is the choice of the evaluation panel. And so it's not going to be exactly the same process in every panel. Some panels ask for short presentations, some ask for slightly longer presentations. Some panels ask for no presentations at all. The structures of the questions can be quite different as well. And so when we're giving the examples, it may be that examples in other panels in other years, or indeed the same panel in another year, may be slightly different. But the experience which Michal and Michał will explain will give you a flavor of what it could look like. So I think the colleague question is not about the technical questions, it's more about the questions in general. So maybe we'll go to Michal from the Czech Republic first of all. About your interview.
Yeah, exactly as you said. In my panel, there was like a 3-minute presentation without any slides, which was quite a challenge, especially since my project is very visual. So I was kind of hoping to show some video at the beginning, and I was surprised that this is actually not expected or not even allowed. So that was the surprise number one. Then, I mean, I prepared for it like a very wide array of questions, I guess. I did a number of mock interviews with colleagues. Eventually, I mean, all these questions I got in the actual interview were really fair. They were mostly about theory and method, so like very specific to research. They were like basically zero like these HR questions that are sometimes included, like example questions. That doesn't mean it won't happen to you, but in my case, it was really like very specific to theory and method, data collection technique, and I feel like, you know, the questions were fair and the interview went quite well. Yeah.
Thank you. Michal, tell us about your interview.
Yes, so I didn't have surprising questions, but I think that yeah, I spent lots of time preparing my presentation. Of course, I have several mock panels, so it's clear that you have to do these mock panels with the national contact point, with others. So I think I had at least 3 or 4 official mock panels, plus a few more with the colleagues or some person hired by the national contact point for kind of advising on giving presentations. So it was very useful. But I can tell that I had lots of technical problems during my interview, so it can also happen, right? So in my case, there were big problems with somehow my computer and WebEx. Although, of course, in all the mock panels, we use exactly the same settings, so this could happen. So be prepared for something like this. And I think also maybe the advice can be that it also can be very useful. So if your colleagues, maybe older colleagues, kind of organize the mock panels for themselves, I mean, and it's good to participate in this kind of events to prepare yourself. I think this is now when I'm as a ERC winner, I'm participating in many mock panels in Poland. This is also very useful for me to prepare for my next mock panels for my ERC consolidator. I think this is also probably the more general, I mean, observation that quite often, for example, more experienced people, when they became ERC panelists, this drastically increased their chances to get ERC advanced by kind of really learning from practice all the details of this discussion. So I think this is very useful to use this kind of opportunities for learning.
Thank you. And just so, because that may raise a question from some of the audience in terms of how you become an ERC panel member. The Scientific Council of the European Research Council, their members personally nominate all of the panel members. So it's not an application process or a website where you express interest. They personally nominate the panel members based on expertise in the research community. So it's really your standing in the research community that they will lead to a potential appointment by the Scientific Council. So a question to both of you again, and it's quite an interesting question. What's the one thing in your proposal that you think made a difference in it getting funded? So if I come to Michal from the Czech Republic first.
Honestly, I don't know. Like, this is the honest answer. I feel like one aspect that shouldn't generally play such a role, but obviously it played like a huge role, was that my topic in social sciences was very timely. I mean, I was dealing with a topic which was discussed a lot in a broader sense in media and elsewhere. So like, besides like the methodological and theoretical aspects of my proposal, I feel like almost every reviewer and almost every panel member basically commented, yeah, I mean, this is a very timely thing and we should study it right now.
Thank you. And then Michal, the same question. What's the one thing that you think made a difference in your proposal being funded?
Yes, I think I wanted to tell something else, but I think this timeless is very important. So I think in my case, it was also kind of important that exactly this was emerging topic globally in the field, and somehow it was natural. But I think in my case, I'm not sure because I don't know who was reviewer, But of course, some of these reviewers were very positive. And I think part of this kind of positive approach was that I also already had some visibility. I was quite active community member, organizing some conferences and applying for some other networking programs, some joint international research programs. And I think this was part, I don't know, I can suppose only because I don't know who was reviewer, but I can imagine that some of these 9 reviewers, they were people who somehow knew me from being very active, being very proactive at the different levels in this field. And somehow they consciously or unconsciously somehow favored that, okay, this is also the right person. The project is good, but also this person is kind of right to do this and maybe lead the field.
And that could be the case. I mean, under the evaluation, as you know, we evaluate both the idea and the person, and the weight is given on the idea. So I think that that's important to recognize in terms of the evaluation. There's greater weight given to the idea than to the person.
Yes.
I just want to raise one thing which often comes up here. When people talk about one thing which makes a difference, it's not the host institution that you apply with. That's not an evaluation criterion. It's not considered, and it's not discussed at all in the panels. And I can assure you that the question of where your host institution is or the name of your host institution doesn't form part of the evaluation process. So maybe the next question I turn to Aurelija and to Rosaria to start off with, because it's really looking at the mechanics of the fellowship scheme. And so let me read the question. The short fellowships are funded by the country where the research will be conducted. Is that correct? And can I apply for a fellowship in the seconded country, or does it have to be the main host country? So I think, to give Michal's example, where he's from Poland, the secondment was in Austria. Where did you apply? So maybe we can go to Aurelija to explain the program and to
maybe Rosaria can kick off.
Sorry, maybe you go first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, you have to apply in the country where you are based, where we are doing research. But you have to check the guidelines because every country has different requirements and conditions. For example, in the case of Estonia, the program, the visiting fellowship program, is open only to researchers who have already applied to an ERC grant, and they pass to step 2 and they have not been funded. So the fact of joining an ERC team will basically allow the scientist to reinforce, to strengthen his or her research profile, to work on the application and to reapply again. So you have to check really with the national authorities that manage the program in the country where you are currently based. And they are those who, of course, fund the salary, the travel costs, according, of course, to the budget availability.
Thanks, Rosaria. Maybe I can take you to the next question at the same time, because it's in a similar vein in terms of how these work. So, for example, you imagine you failed the starting grant call. Can you still apply for the visiting grant to then apply for consolidated grants? So I think it's the same answer that you're giving in terms of the national rules for these schemes apply, but you can answer that question directly.
You're asking me, Martin?
Yes, please, Rosaria. I think it's
again. I think it depends on the different countries. So the person has to check with the guidelines of the country where is based.
Thank you, and I think that's clear. These are not our schemes; they're schemes which are in support of people applying to our schemes, and so they're supported by the national authorities. And because they're national schemes, the entry requirements, the way in which you apply, whether you're eligible or not, will depend on each of the national schemes. So you need to check those really carefully. But in principle, yes, that's exactly what it's about. Maybe somebody failed in a starting grant, and to help them apply for a COG, maybe a visiting grant will help them be able to shape their application better and be successful in a COG application.
The only thing that I can say is that at the moment when they apply, they have to have already an idea of the research proposal that they would like to apply to submit to the ERC, and they have to identify the grantee that they would like to visit. Because at the moment when you contact the national authorities shares with the interested researcher the list of grantees that are available, to host researchers in their teams. And as Michal, Tomza explained, of course, you have to identify the person that works in the same field as you.
Thank you, very clear. In the interest of time, I'm looking at the time, and it's my job as the moderator and chair of the session that we keep to time. So we will take the next 2 questions. We will then answer any remaining questions in writing. I see there'll be another 7 questions which we'll need to answer in writing. And apologies, we can't take them all live, but we'll ensure that these questions are answered, and also the questions which remain from the first questions and answer session, and we will provide answers to them, which will be posted in the website for this event. So is the ERC satisfied with the performance of these two initiatives so far? I mean, I think it's also useful to get the perspective from the NCP in that respect, but let me answer to start off with. I think we would like to ensure that researchers from anywhere can apply to the ERC grants. Excellence can be anywhere. And if there are initiatives which help people frame their application in a way where they can really demonstrate the excellence of their research idea, then the ERC is very happy. We want to fund really the best ideas and the best research, irrespective of the nationality of the researcher or where they're currently located. And these schemes are a good way of ensuring that that can happen. So in that respect, yes, the ERC is satisfied. Can we do more? We would be delighted that there are more opportunities like this, and we would encourage more countries to introduce more of these schemes. But Aurelia, is there anything that you'd like to answer from the perspective of coming from the member state national contact point?
These initiatives are very welcome, and we are actually now in the process of discussing the fellowship and the mentoring implementation of these initiatives and applying for those at the national level. As well, these initiatives that in Lithuania have inspired to create a ERC Lithuanian support program, meaning for those applicants who got B evaluation in the second round after the interviews, they were able to apply for €150,000 grant for 18 months to boost, support their research, work on their methodology, and then reapply for the ERC. So those initiatives are just a starting point, and then member states are encouraged to think even more creatively out of the box.
Thank you. Thank you. Very complimentary to what I said. So I'll take one last question, which actually I'll direct to Michal from Poland. And actually, maybe we can take the second question, since it's specifically for you at the same time. Because in terms of, are these fellowships supported by our own institutions? Are your host institution not particularly happy about you going on secondment? So it'd be good to know from your experience, Michal, when you went to Innsbruck, what was the attitude of your current host institution for you going on secondment for 3 months with there's no guarantee that you would have won your ERC grant afterwards. What was the approach in your host institution?
I think it was quite positive at that time. I don't remember, maybe I was even, because initially when I was hired at my university, I have big reduction of teaching duties. So from my institution, there was no problem at all. And I think that I went for 3 months to Innsbruck, but I also used to kind of going almost everywhere, every year for, let's say, 1 month somewhere for similar reasons. So I think that this is something very useful for me as a theoretical physicist who can somehow go for 1 month. So this was the practice. When my group was smaller, I was doing quite often. So I think this is something absolutely acceptable at my university. Of course, if it does not conflict with your teaching duty, they wouldn't mind typically, I would say, right? Because yes.
So a very positive experience. Just the next question, so we can take it quickly. You mentioned it before, but did you personally know your host in Innsbruck before you applied for the visiting fellowship, or did you contact them cold?
I think I already known the host from some conference. It was not very close personal knowledge. It was rather like being familiar that, of course, I know her as a great scientist. I think she probably knew that I exist somewhere in Poland working on my topic, but I think this was the community in our field. The subfield where I work is not so large. There is, tens of groups, not in the world, not hundreds. So somehow it's easier to know each other from some conferences. So there were some familiarity, but I knew better somehow the other professors from Innsbruck, and this was part of the contact line, I think. So I more contacted through my to the other person with whom we applied for some other European projects before.
Thank you. I see there's still more questions online. I'm sorry, we need to close the webinar so that we keep to the time that we had announced, but we'll
Martin, if I may, we have questions that you can about, for example, eligibility, resubmission, that these are the typical questions that you have to address to the national contact points in your countries. If we can give this advice.
That's very good and and actually many of the questions which were answered today, not the personal experience ones, this is exactly where your national contact points are really well placed to help you. So thank you for that, Rosaria. That's really important. We will also ensure that these questions which are not answered, we'll give some written answers to them. I think there's half a dozen questions which are left. So with that, I'd like to close the webinar. I'd like to thank all of you for attending. I'd also like to thank the speakers, to Aurelia, to Rosaria, to Michal and to Michał. The recording of this webinar and all of the presentations will be available on our website in just a few days, in the coming days. It'll take us a little longer, but we will make sure that we have all of the answers to the unanswered questions, which will also be posted on our webinar. If you are looking for further information sessions, we will have one further information session coming up on the 25th of March in Moldova. It'll be a hybrid event, and you can register for that on our website. So before I close the webinar, I'd just like to say it's always useful for us to get your feedback. And on Slido, there'll be a poll to get your feedback on your views and recommendations for the future, but your views of this webinar. So if you could take some time just to go back to Slido, the same link that you already had open, and Rosaria is sharing it on the screen, so you can see the Slido, how you enter Slido again here on screen, and we'd really welcome you for doing that. I'd also like to thank my team for putting this webinar together. So that's Rosaria and Laura and John. And with that, I'd like to thank you all. And just to finish with Rosaria's message, which I think is really important, the next step you should do is go out and contact your national contact point.
Absolutely, second that.
So thank you very much for you all, and we'll bring this webinar to a close. Thank you then.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.